Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello friends, this is Professor Neelam Panchal from BK Schools, Gujarat University, and I welcome you all in this session on forecasting. Friends, let us try to understand what is forecasting in this session. Let me introduce you to the topic. Forecasting is an activity to calculate or predict some future event or condition, usually as a result of rational study or analysis of pertinent data. Forecasting is widely used today in many fields, especially in industry, marketing, economy and finance. Such as in consumable product manufacturing, an accurate prediction of the future demand is very helpful in providing precise inventory, reducing transportation cost and then increasing profit. Forecasting provides benchmarks for the firms which need a long-term perspective of the operations. For example, much of the derivatives market in the options and futures trading is an outgrowth of the business, and investor forecasting also all to hedge to ensure the businesses against the adverse market changes that could hurt their firm. Also, in an organization, forecasting of everything needs to be done, and that is where is the importance of the forecasting. Let us try to understand the objectives of this session. The objectives of the sessions are to define forecasting and distinguish it from related concepts like prediction and estimation. To understand the significance of forecasting in organizational decision making. To identify the various types and methods of forecasting, including their applications and limitations. Next is to analyze the role of forecasting in different functional areas. To evaluate and challenges the ethical considerations associated with the forecasting practices. So now let us try to understand in detail what is forecasting. So, forecasting is the process of making informed estimates about the future events based on the analysis of the past and present data. It is widely used in various fields such as business, economics and meteorology to anticipate future trends and make strategic decisions. Prediction, on the other hand, if we look into, prediction is a broader term that encompasses any statement about the future, often without a structured methodology. It may or may not be based upon the data analysis. The third word here is estimation. Now, estimation involves approximating unknown parameters based on available data, typically focusing on the current or the past conditions. It is often used in statistical analysis to infer the value of population parameter. So, in essence, while all the three involve some form of anticipating unknown values, forecasting is a structured approach grounded in data analysis and modeling also, and distinguishing it from the more general concept of the prediction and the retrospective focus of the estimation. So, the forecasting is a technique that uses the historical data to make informed decisions about the future events or conditions. So, it is not simply guessing. A tool for the business and investors as well as the management, forecasting takes expert analysis and applies the complex models to allocate the portfolios and the budgets. But just how reliable are these crystal ball like predictions? So after all, economists, investors, and the financial planners frequently display a striking talent for modern humor about the art of economic prediction. The only function of the forecasting, the famed 20th century economist John Kenneth Galbraith said, is to make astrology look respectable. So, or as an equally influential economist, Paul A. Semlin, put it, Wall Street models predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions, as forecasting involves making predictions. In finance, if you look into, companies use forecasting to estimate the earnings or other data for the later periods. Traders and analysts use the forecast in valuation models to time trades or to identify trends. Standard forecasting techniques include the qualitative methods like the expert opinion and the quantitative methods like the statistical models and the trend analysis. So, managers in day-to-day life also need to do the forecasting. The limits of the forecasting include the uncertainty of the future event and the potential for the errors in the data or assumptions used in the forecasting process. Yet, forecasting is very central to the modern management as well as modern investment and the business practices. So, businesses hire and expand based on the predicting sales figures, market demand, or economic indicators. Investors trade stocks, invest in the funds, or rashly exit the market based on the predictions about the stock prices, interest rate, or broader market moves. However, the work of the forecasting applies far beyond boardrooms and trading floors. Consumer spending patterns, job market trends, and even the geopolitical events all fall under the purview of forecasters. So, in an organization, we have to look into that forecasting is very important along with the planning. And there are various types and the methods of the forecasting. Which types and which methods to use for the forecasting, that is totally depend upon the nature, upon the size, upon the way in which the organization want to work. So, what are the types and methods of forecasting, its applications and limitations? Let us try to understand it in detail. Forecasting methods are broadly categorized into qualitative and quantitative approaches. Let us look into what are the qualitative methods first. Now, these are the subjective techniques used when the historical data is scarce or not applicable. They rely on expert opinions and market research. So, the first method here is a Delphi method. What is Delphi method? A structured communication technique where a panel of experts answers the questionnaires in a multiple rounds to reach a consensus. Then the market research. So, gathering the data about consumers' needs and the preferences to predict the future trends. If you look into the limitations, these methods can be influenced by the personal biases and it may lack the precision of the quantitative methods. Another part is a quantitative method. So, these rely on the numerical data and statistical techniques to forecast the future events. So, the first technique over here is a time series analysis. Now, what is time series analysis? As the name suggests, you are here analyzing the historical data points to identify the trends, cycles, and seasonal variations. Then there is a causal models. So, examining the cause and effect relationship between the variables to predict the future outcomes. What are the limitations over here? This method requires substantial historical data and may not account for unforeseen events or changes in the market dynamics. Choosing the appropriate forecasting method, it depends upon the context. It depends upon the data availability also and the specific needs of the organization. Now, what happens is forecasting plays a very, very important role, and it is again a process. It involves a lot of people. So, the point is, forecasting as a whole cannot be done at a central level many a times. So, departmental wise, there are different roles that must be played at each level. Let us try to understand the role of forecasting in the functional areas. So, forecasting aids, let us take an example of the production, right? So, production planning, inventory management, supply chain optimization, these are the areas in which in operations the forecasting is needed. Another example is by predicting the product demand, companies can adjust their production schedules to meet the customer needs efficiently. If you look into another function, let us say finance. Now, in the finance, we all know that we forecast, right? What we forecast, we all forecast about the money. We all forecast about the funds inflow, the funds outflow, the utilization of the fund, and the allocation of the funds and everything. So, financial forecasting involves projecting revenues, projecting expenses and the cash flows. It also helps in the budgeting. It also helps in the investment planning also and assessing the financial variability and the viability of the project. Let us take another function, that is marketing. Now we all know that market is so fluctual and it is totally depend upon the customer. We all know that customer is the king, and in such a market, forecasting is very, very important, friends, right? So marketing teams use forecasting to anticipate market trends, consumer behavior, and a campaign effectiveness. We need to understand what would happen in the market, because based upon that forecast only, many times the production and the other departments work. So these enables them to design the targeted marketing strategies, and thereafter they allocate the budgets effectively. So somewhere or the other way, you try to see the interrelatedness of the forecasting in each the functional areas, and in each functional area the forecasting is important. Let us try to look into another function, human resources. Now, can you tell how human resources and the forecasting is important? Think over for a minute and write on a piece of paper. So, HR forecasting predicts future staffing needs based on the organizational growth, turnover rates, and market requirements and the condition, and it assists in the workforce planning, recruitment, training and development, skill development, learning and development, and all the other HR activities. So by integrating forecasting into these functional areas, organizations can definitely enhance efficiency. It reduces the cost and it improves the overall performance. Why? Because if you do not forecasting well, then it may end up in a difficult plan and thereby a difficulty in the control. Now, let us try to look into the challenges and the ethical considerations in the forecasting. First of all, let us look into what are the challenges in the forecasting. Now, the first here is a data quality. Friends, inaccurate or incomplete data can lead to flawed forecast affecting the decision making. Model limitations, that is over-reliance on the models, may overlook qualitative factors and unforeseen events. Uncertainty, that is external factors like economic shifts or natural disasters, it can disrupt the forecast. Now, how forecasting work then? So today, if you look into the forecasting blends the data analysis, machine learning, statistical modeling, and also the expert judgment. In the era of the ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence and machine learning, forecasting is very, very important. In the investing, if you look into equity analysts, they also use the forecasting to predict how the trends such as gross domestic product, that is GDP, or unemployment will change in the coming quarter or a year. Statisticians, if you look into, they employ the forecasting to analyze the potential impact of a change in the business operations. Analysts then derive earning estimates that are often aggregated into the consensus number. So, if the actual earnings announcement miss the estimates, it can have a large impact on the company's stock price. So, we can say that outside world also, externally also, it's very important. Now, if you look into forecasting in business, now as we've seen in all the functional areas, it is very, very important. In business management, forecasting serves as a cornerstone of the strategic decisions, influencing almost every aspect of organizations' operations. By attempting to predict the trends and conditions through qualitative and the quantitative measures, companies aim to position themselves advantageously in the marketplace. So these predictions guide critical choices ranging from the market entry strategy, product development strategy, supply chain management, workforce planning, and so the task is often to move from forecast to the planning. If you really want to put the forecast into action, it is very, very important to focus upon, right? So the consensus and the consequences of getting a forecast wrong, it can be far reaching. So correct predictions are very important. Correct predictions allow the businesses to improve how they divide their resources, whether they can capitalize on emerging prospects and mitigate risk. Conversely, inaccurate forecast, it can lead to misaligned strategies and inefficient use of resources, missed opportunities, and the risks that were not managed or issued or insured for. So, there are ripple effects of forecasting on different business functions as well. What can be the effect? Let us say market strategy. Accurate projections of the consumer demand and market trends inform which segment to target and how to pitch the products and the services. Production planning, so forecast drive decisions on production volumes, helping to balance the inventory cost with the ability to meet the consumer demand. Supply chain management, if you look into, then predicting the resource availability, supplier dependability, and the constraints on both is crucial for maintaining the smooth operations and controlling cost. Human resources, if you look into, then workforce planning relies heavily on the forecast for the future business needs and the labor conditions. Financial planning, as we said, projection of the revenue, projection of the cost, expenses, market conditions, underpinning budgeting, and the investment decisions that are all based upon the forecasting. So friends, it's very, very important to forecast thoroughly and forecast accurately, because the consequences of the poor forecasting are really, really severe. So companies may find themselves overextended in a declining markets, struggling with the excess inventory, or unable to meet the unexpected surges in the demand. Now let us try to understand the implications of the forecasting or prediction. Okay, so first of all, forecasting is both objective and subjective. So as noted earlier also, forecasting is the art and science of predicting the future events, which may involve taking historical data and projecting them into the future with some sort of mathematical model. It may be subjective or intuitive prediction of the future, or it may be both. That is a combination of the mathematical models adjusted by good judgment. So as definitions makes clear, forecasts are possible only when a history of the data exists and reasonable inferences can be reached on the basis of that data. For example, a canteen manager. Now he can use the past data to forecast the number of regular products like tea. But suppose he wants to offer a new product like a black coffee, then what he would do? Since he has no past data, so the estimation of the sales of the new product, prediction instead of forecasting, will be needed. So where you want a prediction and where you want a forecasting is important. Then forecasting prepares an organization for a common future objective through coordination. So forecasting helps develop and implement a continuous improvement program specially tailored for any particular business and organization culture and environment. So it is an aid to other program which may involve implementation of the proven manufacturing and distribution planning and a control tools and the techniques such as manufacturing resource planning, distribution resource planning, and just-in-time. So in forecasting, somewhere demand and sales forecasting in particular is also very, very essential, because three major activities of any operation manager are planning, scheduling, and controlling the system. Demand forecast that drives the production capacity and scheduling the system in a firm that also affect the financial, marketing, HR, and operational planning functions. So somewhere or the other way, forecasting is not the critical part of the operation manager function, but it is also important for the finance, it's also important for marketing, and equally important for HR. That means it is important for all the functional area. So it brings every department together and it strengthens the corporate culture and environment. Forecasts provide a basis for the coordination of the plans for the activities in various parts of a company. So when all the parts of the company base upon their work on the same forecast, they prepare for the same future and their efforts are mutually supportive. So in other words, coordination of the activities is accomplished when adequate forecasts prepare an organization for a common future objective. On the other hand, forecasting aids in both the short-term and the long-term planning. Friends, forecasting are important inputs for the long-term planning and for the strategic decisions. At the same time, they are very important for the short-range decisions in day-to-day operations. So, operation manager try to forecast a wide range of future events then potentially affect the success. Most often, the concern is forecasting customer demand for the products or the services. So managers may want long-run estimates of the overall demand or short-run estimates of the demand for each individual product. Businesses must develop the forecast of the demand level which the company should prepare to meet. So since the service operations generally cannot store their output as inventory, they must try harder to estimate the level of the future demand. So when the service organization fail to accurately forecast their demand, they often face a double-edged sword. Friends, overstaffing leading to the waste and non-optimal operation on one hand, and understaffing resulting in a lot of business time, customer on the other hand. So, what are the subjects of the forecast? So, in making the decisions, managers need to make the inferences about the future in several subject areas, right? So, the relevant areas are the technological developments, business conditions, and the expected level of demand. With respect to these organizations, use three major types of forecasting in planning the future of their operations. So, these are the economic, technological, and demand forecasting. Now, economic forecasts address the business cycle by predicting the inflation rates, money supplies, recession, infrastructure, housing, and other planning indicators. Businesses can gain useful ideas about the expected long and intermediate range business conditions and business growth from such forecast. Fiscal policy and monetary policies are also considered in economic forecasting. Secondly, technological forecasts. They are concerned with the rates of the technological progress, which can result in the birth of the innovative products requiring new plants and equipments. So, technological changes provide many businesses with a new product and the material to offer, new methods to be implemented, while some businesses with the obsolete products or the processes fail in the face of the competition. So, forecast about the technological developments are very important for businesses in the dynamic field like a computer, technology, telecommunications, services. And thirdly, demand forecast. Now, they are the projections of the anticipated level of the demand for the company's products or the services. Now, these forecasts are also called the sales forecast. Demand forecast are very important instruments for the planning and monitoring decisions in the organization. So, in effect, the whole of the operation management is guided by the demand forecast of the goods and the services. The discussions of that also has tried to look into so that forecasting is done well and the forecasting demand is possible. Now, there are different factors affecting the product demand forecast, which is given much importance in the operations management. So, managers most often have to forecast the customer demand for the product and the services. Managers need a long run estimations of the overall demand and a short run estimates also of the products. So, they have to know what factors are responsible for the product's demand. Now, use of the forecasting, let us try to look into what are the uses of the organization. So, in the organization, forecasting is used for three purposes. First is new output introductions. So, forecasting is used to decide whether the environmental demand is sufficient to generate the returns desired by the organization. If the demand exits, but at low a price to cover the cost the organization will incur in producing the output, then the organization should reject the opportunity. Capacity needs. So, forecasting is used to determine the long-time capacity needs for facility design. An accurate projection of a demand for a number of years in the future can save the organization great expense in expanding or contracting capacity to accommodate future environmental demands due to competitive forces in the environment. Even in the non-profit sector, an organization that produces inefficiently because of excess idle capacity or inefficiently to meet the demand is causing disaster. Another point over here is production planning. So, forecasting is used to ascertain the short-term fluctuation in demand for production planning, workforce scheduling, material planning, and so forth. Now, these forecasts are also special importance to the operation management and crucially affect the operational productivity, bottlenecks, master scheduling, meeting promised delivery dates, and other such issues of the concern to the top management and the organization as a whole. So now, after understanding all these fundamentals of the forecasting, let us summarize the session. We have seen that forecasting is an indispensable tool that empowers the organization to navigate uncertainty, make informed decisions, and strategically plan for the future. By systematically analyzing the historical and the current data, forecasting enables businesses to anticipate the trends, allocate the resources efficiently, and mitigate the potential risk. However, effective forecasting is not without challenges. Organizations must address the issues related to the data quality, model limitations, and the inherent uncertainty of the future events. Ethical considerations such as ensuring transparency, avoiding biases, and maintaining accountability are also paramount to uphold the trust and integrity in forecasting practices. By embracing the robust forecasting technologies, methodologies, and adhering to the ethical standards, organization can estimate and enhance the resilience, agility, and competitiveness in an ever-evolving business landscape. So friends, I hope you are clear with all the fundamentals of the forecasting as a process, steps, importance, interrelatedness, and importance in every aspect. By now, we are clear that forecasting is really very important for the organization. I hope you liked the session. Thank you.